questions, just keep your hands up and I'll get a mic over to you. Let's start in the back left here with Steven.
Coach, when you look at tight end CJ Dippre, just what makes him unique in having his offense run, especially when it's cranky?
I think CJ's size is rare. He's a big person, and I think he's hard to tackle when he gets going. I think that showed up in the game, and it has shown up, throughout fall camp and spring practice, and so I thought he did a nice job of breaking tackles and running downhill and behind his pads.
Jump to the right side, Nick.
Yeah, Coach DeBoer noted it was easy to see how Jalen's throwing guys open more recently. I mean, how have you seen him develop in that regard in the past couple weeks?
Well, we put a lot of emphasis on it. That was an area that we felt in the first few games that we could improve, and we spent a lot of time collectively as a staff just trying to simulate that as best you can in practice. And I thought, all the coaches and the players did a real good job, of improving in that area. And obviously, especially when you're playing tight coverage, the location of the football matters, to give our guys an opportunity to make a play. And the credit, as always, goes to the players for executing in those moments. But that certainly was a point of emphasis from the coaching staff to the players that, we can improve in those areas to try to make sure, that we give our guys an opportunity to make a play, and that the guys catching the ball are aware, of what the quarterback is seeing and anticipating on where he might throw it as well. So, that was a point of emphasis over the last few, weeks, and it showed up in the game. And so there's things that every week you look at that you can improve on, and that you try to address those things in the week of prep.
Jump to the far left, Chase.
How did you assess Elijah Pritchett's play at right tackle?
I thought, up front, I thought the pass protection was solid by and large. I thought there were times in the run game where we could do a better job, and that's not just specifically with Pritch. I'm proud of the progress that group has made. I'm proud of the effort, the toughness, the physicality. But I also know there's lots for us to work on to be more consistent in certain areas. I think it's very easy. Sometimes you watch the game and maybe a player gets a penalty or, something happens and you just assume that it was that person, but that's not always the case. Sometimes somebody else, has an error or a miscommunication or whatever that may be, and that's where the mistake happens, but it falls on someone else's shoulders. So I thought across the the line of scrimmage that there were some good moments for sure in the game. Like I said, I thought the pocket was by and large pretty clean, but I thought there was things in the run game that we could do a better job.
Jump back to the right side of Joe here.
Coach, you called two pretty interesting plays in the first half with trick plays. Can you talk about the decision to dial those up? The pass from Kendrick Law, there was a double pass for Kendrick Law, and then the reverse or double pass to Jeremy Bernard. The decision to use those trick plays when the offense seemed to be going so well without them.
Well, I think without getting into too much detail, about the thought process behind some of those plays, I think every week you're trying to find ways to put your players in the best position to be successful against who they're going against, the scheme, the players, the personnel, and so those were just plays that we felt would have a chance. And ultimately, it comes down to the execution in practice to give you the confidence, whether it's a throw, a run, a different type of play. We have all of them in our offense, and I think ultimately the execution that happens in practice gives you the confidence, not just as coaches but as players, that you can execute those in different moments in the game. And I think there's value in having a variety of types of plays because it becomes harder to defend. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but I think there's value in those. And some weeks you feel like that you have advantages or the looks that you're looking for, and other weeks you don't. And so you wait for the right times and the right games to put some of those types of plays in.
Stay on the right side. Let's go to Charlie.
Hey, Coach, just with Ryan Williams, what do you think of the way he played on Saturday? And over the first month of the season, how have you seen him maybe progress and gain confidence?
I don't think confidence was ever an issue as far as him gaining that. I think he's a confident player, and I think that comes from his work ethic and his preparation, and how hard he practices each and every day. And I thought he played well in the game.
Go to the left side here, Tony.
Are there challenges of building consistency in the running game with the running backs where like Jalen's hitting so many touches and they're not really getting a consistent,
mean, you could say that that's, you know, maybe a factor in it. I don't think that maybe a run in the game on Saturday, we felt maybe that the running backs could have read the run a little bit different. I thought some of the issues with some of the run game was more, we didn't block or communicate as well up front as we could have. You know, so I don't think it was a matter of the rhythm of the running backs. I understand the question. But, you know, I thought some of the issues we had running the football was more on the communication and the fundamentals up front than it was on, you know, the running backs hitting the right spot or getting into the feel of the game. And so, you know, we try to incorporate as many players as possible. We try to do the things that give us the best, you know, opportunity to get first downs and score points. And so, you know, sometimes guys get into a rhythm and a flow, and, you know, sometimes, you know, there's a series or two where guys aren't touching the ball, and you got to stay ready and take advantage of those opportunities. And it's a long game, and so I think our guys have done a real nice job of just staying locked in and focused each series. You know, whether or not they got the ball in the previous 4 or 5 plays or not.
Go on, Kurt, right up the middle here, Kurt.
Yes, Coach, you had a very efficient start to the game, to say the least. 23 plays, 28 points. And I'm assuming that was scripted, or most of it, or much of it. And I wonder if there's ever a time in a game where you can sort of rinse and repeat that script later in the game.
You're asking if we repeat calls? So,
Well, the whole script, for that matter.
yeah, I mean, I think you're always balancing that, you know, between trying to keep the opponent off balance by not running the same plays, and then yet, you know, if you felt like it worked and there was a reason for that, going back, you know, to them. I think, you know, we've ran more than, you know, you talk about the opening script, we repeated some of those calls, for sure. And so, you know, I think you're mindful of who you're going against and the adjustments that they're going to make relative to what you've already had success or not with. You know, I think the other piece of that is just because a play didn't work early in the game, I think you have to be honest about why that did or did not happen, and not be afraid to go back to it if it was just an execution or a communication issue. And so there's certainly times where you repeat calls or go back to, you know, a sequence of plays if you felt like it was successful. And you're also trying to think ahead of what the adjustments are that they're going to make based on what you've done.
Let's go to Colin on the left side.
You already mentioned the wrinkle plays. I'll add in the little like direct halfback snap. I'm curious with a offense, what do you see in Jalen Milroe to kind of allow him to kind of be a part of those plays? What's kind of like that next step to continue to add those wrinkles, to continue to add diversity in terms of run and pass plays, and kind of keep opposing defenses off balance? What is kind of like that next step?
I think, you know, obviously it always starts with the quarterback and the things that you feel like, you know, you can do well. You know, in that particular play, he didn't have a huge role in that play. You know, he had to do his job, but I think anytime, you know, this goes for players and this goes for units of football, whether it's offense or defense. I think the more you do well, the harder you are to defend. The key is that you do them well, you know, and so that you execute at a high level. And so I think that's the challenge as a staff and as players, is to try to find that sweet spot of doing the things that we can execute at a high level, and then what's the level of variety that you can have to still maintain the level of execution that you're looking for. And so, because that's when you become really tough to defend. You know, if, you know, it's like a basketball player that can only, you know, drive to the rim one way. You know, you can tilt him that way and maybe use his other hand. If you can't get to the rim. You know, and so in football, you know, you got to be able to dribble with both hands and, you know, shoot from outside the 3-point line and drive to the rim. You got to have different ways to attack, different schemes, different formations, different concepts, different players, and you're constantly building that as the season goes on. And you know the things that your opponent is preparing for. You know the things that you've shown on film, and trying to anticipate and predict based on their structures and their personnel. This is what they might do based on what they've seen. You know, how do we counter that? How do we try to keep them off balance?
Time for a couple more questions, starting in the back right here, Ryan.
Coach DeBoer mentioned after the game the completion percentage of Milroe, how impressive it was, and I'm just wondering, on your perspective, is the sky the limit on what this can be with Milroe and his throwing as well as running? And the progression he's made through the season so far?
I don't know if I would use those terms. I know that's. I would just say that we're continuing to improve, and what has happened in the past has no impact on the game this Saturday. There's no carryover yards, points, completions. Each week in this conference and at the highest level of competition in college football, which is what we're in, it starts over, and so you got to earn it each and every week. And so, that's really the message and the focus for the players is that we have to put a good plan in for the players this week. They have to practice hard. We got to prepare them. We got to go execute on game day. And no matter what has happened in the past or the completion percentages of previous games, good or bad, has no impact on what the game's going to look like on Saturday. It's about what you do and how well you prepare and how well you execute in those moments. And so obviously that was, a good job, and we needed those, completions to find a way to go 1-0 last week. But, the things that occurred last week and the plays that maybe worked last week has no impact on the team that we're going against this week. And, you're challenged each week in this league. The coach, Coach Lee and the staff there at Vanderbilt are some of the best defensive coaches in the country. The respect that we have for them is tremendous. And so it'll be a great challenge for our players to try to execute to the best of their ability this week.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate
Okay,
that.
thanks, Roll Tide.